As President Obama prepared to make his historic visit to Cuba, the first by a U.S. president in nearly 90 years, we spent some time in the biggest Cuban communities in the world, Havana and Miami. A majority of Americans and Cubans support the reestablishment of relations between the Cold War foes, but there are still plenty of people on both sides who remain highly suspicious of the intentions of each government. Through this 360-degree experience, you'll see and hear from Cubans and Cuban-Americans as they each delve into the complicated, emotional politics of U.S.-Cuba relations by answering a simple question: can Obama's visit change the situation for the people in Cuba? We start off with William Carbonell, an art dealer in Old Havana who is already seeing more American tourists stopping into his shop.
Yo considero que el viaje del presidente a Cuba sea un viaje que nos traiga.
I believe that the visit of the president to Cuba will be one that will bring many possibilities for our relations that have been broken for more than 60 years, and one that will be a benefit for both countries.
Back in Miami, Luis Molina, a painter who left Cuba during the 1980 Mariel boat lift, thinks that the Cuban government will be the biggest beneficiary of the opening, not the Cuban people.
What we want for Cuba, we don't want for Cuba to China. We want for Cuba that Cuba be free, that the people can elect the president, free election of president. We want from Cuba that the people can express themselves in the way that they want to. The one that the people can travel when they want to any place that they want to. And we want, in general, we want freedom like we was before. We want democratic from Cuba. We don't want any more communism in Cuba.
Angel Manuel Garcia Fabre, a barber in a Havana neighborhood called El Cerro, hopes that Obama's visit will kickstart the import of American-made goods to his impoverished island.
Yo pienso, no sé, que mañana
I think that tomorrow I'll be able to go out and buy my clippers in the store, and I won't have to run around and find them. Because having relations with President Obama will, in time, end the blockade, and that will make it easier for people to find their tools for work that are so hard to find now.
But back in Miami, Abel Gomez, a barber who left Cuba in 1998, wasn't so optimistic.
Yo no creo que el viaje de Obama a Cuba va a cambiar la vida en Cuba. Porque reducir.
I don't think Obama's visit to Cuba is going to change things in Cuba. That reduces this argument to the idea that prosperity and progress of Cuba is dependent on the United States. When this depends on something internal on the island, no president, through a simple visit, is going to be able to change the reality of Cubans. Progress depends on basic things: democracy, a multi-party political system, respect for human rights, freedom of the press. These things are basic for human progress, not just for the economy, so that the people have liberty, so they can move around, the freedom of movement.
During his visit, Obama spent time with Cuba's emerging class of private entrepreneurs, including Julio Alvarez, a Havana man who restores those classic American cars that keep rumbling around the city.
Para mí el viaje de Obama a Cuba es muy importante.
To me, the visit of President Obama to Cuba is very, very important. But I don't think there are any more changes that he can make. I'm happy that I'll get to meet him, maybe shake his hand, because that is something very positive to continue all the things that have been happening to change our relations with Cuba and the United States. But realistically, he's not the one responsible for changing everything. Back in Miami, Lourdes Inser, a Cuban-American who owns a cigar shop there, is more focused on the human rights violations that the Castro regime keeps committing.
Me encantaría esa apertura de las relaciones, ¿me entiende? Pero
I would love an opening of relations, but what I don't like is that the Castro regime will continue. They're the owners of everything. We've suffered a lot. I'm the daughter of political prisoners, and part of my childhood was suffering in Cuba, having to go see my mother in prison, my father. We suffered a lot.
Sufrimos mucho. Si Obama le exige más al gobierno de los Castro.
I see that Obama has been very flexible, and the Castros push for more and more and more. But I would love for there to be change. that families could see each other again. Fathers, sons, all of that.
Now it's time to sit in with some Cubans doing what they do best, debating politics over a game of dominoes. Here we met Guillermo Naranjo, a retired physics teacher who wanted nothing to do with Obama's visit or American involvement on his island.
They need to understand that they're not the umbilical cord of the world, and that wherever they go, there's war, there's destruction. Seeking power and power and power, and for what? Global hegemony. That can't be. That can't be. That's impossible. Everyone has the right to live free and sovereign.
Those same debates are playing out in Miami, where Rogelio Chirino had a rosier view of Obama's historic visit.
Bueno, yo pienso consiguiendo el trabajo, apoyándolo.
I think he can help create jobs, boost tourism, create better jobs for the people. Baseball players could come and go. That would be very important because it would help the economy of the country.
Y eso sería muy importante porque eso le ayudaría a la economía del país. Yo como cubano,
as a Cuban, I want my country to prosper. And I think that is one of the big possibilities for our country, that it can prosper. Because it's going to get help from the biggest country in the world, the most powerful country in the world.
Porque va a tener una ayuda del país más grande del mundo, el más poderoso del mundo.